So in China, we see it's the most outstanding example of a latecomer country. It didn't arrive on the major industrial scene as a global player until relatively recently, so it's having to catch up. So we see all of China's strategies in fossil fuels, for example. Its oil companies, its gas companies, the big companies like Shenhua involved in the coal industry, they're all playing catch-up in one way or another. They're scouring the globe, they're entering into new contractual forms, and completely new countries for these global industries, like Namibia in Southern Africa or Sudan. And it's interesting if you've got the history of Eni and Agip in your sights. The role that Agip and Enrico Mattei played in the 1950s, transforming the world oil industry at that time by negotiating new kinds of contracts. So Eni was able to play the role of a latecomer to the world oil industry in the 1950s. And as a latecomer, it was able to transform things by negotiating new kinds of contracts with oil-producing countries, like Egypt, like Iran. These were very important oil supply contracts signed between Eni and these countries. Revolutionary for the 1950s. Now we see the same kind of thing occurring with China entering into new kinds of contractual relations with countries like Namibia and Sudan. The same process. The latecomer comes on the scene, transforms the status quo by negotiating new kinds of contracts with new kinds of strategies as a latecomer. So it's becoming more and more dependent on oil imports, and it's utilising more and more of its coal because it has a lot of domestic coal. And in that way, China is replicating the Industrial Revolution that preceded its arrival in Europe and in the United States and in Japan. But at the same time, it recognises that as a latecomer, it cannot stay dependent on fossil fuels. To use a very nice expression, it wants to avoid the carbon lock-in of the industrial countries of today. It wants to develop a system that will release it from the issues of energy insecurity associated with sourcing all your oil from, say, the Middle East, the issues of geopolitics of oil, gas and coal, and the looming resource scarcities that will threaten the entire industrial project that China has underway. The looming resource scarcities that are associated with peak oil, peak coal. So I can spend a lot of time talking about those issues, but I'd like to actually leave those to one side in this particular talk and just focus on the fact that there are very good reasons why China might want to look beyond the fossil fuel era and look to establish an energy foundations that go beyond oil, gas and coal. And that's why we would expect to see it looking to establish a presence in some of the renewable energy industries. So that's why we see in China today, in the year 2010, we see a country that presents two contradictory faces to the world. On the one hand, a country that is building up the fossil fuel industry faster than any other country on the planet, building more coal-fired power stations than any other country on the planet. And on the other hand, a country that is building wind energy, solar energy, hydro energy industries faster than any other country on the planet. So these are two quite different perspectives on China, and in a sense they are contradictory. And that's really my starting point, to ask, well, how can we in some sense reconcile these two contradictory tendencies that we see in China? Now here's one of them. This is the picture of China as the world's most threatening coal-burning country. Here it's burning all of this coal, that's the blue. These are coal-burning power stations. It's adding 60 to 70 gigawatts of coal-burning electricity production capacity this year. That's more than 1 billion kilowatt, 1 billion watt power station each week. That's why people talk about China adding a gigawatt a week. And it's all in this blue area here. So this gives you a picture of just how dominant coal is in the electricity producing sector in China. And there's no way that that is going to reduce in the short to medium term. And that's why China is going to go on burning coal, and it's going to go on emitting carbon into the atmosphere for a long time to come. Any other view on that would be simply mistaken optimism. So there's one picture of China, a very sobering picture. This is the picture of China as the dirty, coal-burning country that is going to emit more carbon into the atmosphere than any other country on the planet for many years to come. But this is the other picture of China. Here is China building up its wind power, and it's been doubling its capacity, 2003 to 2004, 2004 to 2005, 2005 to 2006, and so on, doubling every year. For 5 years it's been doubling every year. Now that is, if you look in terms of world industrial history, that is an unprecedented achievement. Unprecedented, even by Japan. At the height of Japan's fast growth period in the 1960s, no industry doubled every single year the way that the wind power industry has been doubling in China. So if it keeps going, then you can see this chart goes off the wall, through the ceiling. So there's another picture of China, rapidly introducing not just wind, but also solar, the same kind of picture, hydro, the same kind of picture, even nuclear, the same kind of picture. And I'll show you some charts on that in a moment. But this is a very different picture, you see. This is not China, the dirty, coal-burning, carbon-emitting country. This is the China building completely new industries and forging a foundation for its industrial development based on new industries that have nothing to do with oil or gas or even coal. And that's a different model of industrialization, because the model of industrialization based on fossil fuels is the traditional Western model of industrialization, and China is developing a different one based on a different set of energy foundations, which themselves serve as the foundations for its industrial development. So it's not just using wind, it's not just using solar or using hydro, but it's building the technology needed for these industries and building new industries, both for its domestic consumption and then for export. And if you don't see that side of the China phenomenon, you're missing the most important feature. It's not just a consumer of these renewable energies, it's also a builder. And it's building them as the core, as the foundation of its 21st century industrial strategy.